Awesome. Thank you for that. So welcome everyone to the call. We're very happy to have you with us today. It's going to be a short and educational session today. The purpose of the discussion is to take people through the issues and the value associated with migrating from on-premise data management solutions to cloud data management solutions. And as part of the sessions, we'll demonstrate a utility that Tridant have built to accelerate the migration of data, and we'll show how this has helped organizations that we work with. So Oswald, if you want to go to just the introduction slide, I'd like to start by introducing our speakers for today, just in order of appearance. I'll start with Michael Taylor, commonly called MT. So MT is our Trident director and general manager of data, including data management, data science, and data analytics. MT has been in this industry for about 20 years. So if you're looking for any guidance or advice, he's a really great person to have a chat with. And he always makes the effort to build relationships or partnerships, I should say, with all of our data analytics clients. Then we also have Oswald Almeida. Oswald leads our cloud data practice at Trident. He's been in this space around 15 years and in the data analytics industry as well. And over the last few years, he's been focused on architecting and building solutions for our customers on the cloud, predominantly using Snowflake and also Azure, AWS, and Google technologies. Then we also have Andrew Montgomery, aka Monty from Snowflake, joining us today. Monty is Snowflake's partner sales engineering manager for APJ, and he's been Trident's partner support for Snowflake. He also now manages a team of sales engineers across the APJ region, and he'll be sharing his insights today on Snowflake with us. And then finally, we have Rupak TJ. Rupak is one of Trident's star consultants in our data management and data analytics team. And Rupak is actually the creator of the migrator that you'll see today, and he played a major role in the case study that you'll hear about in this session. So if you have any questions during the session, please send them through the chat. We'll try and answer as we go along, but we'll definitely have time at the end. The session should only be around 30-45 minutes. And so with that said, I think we can kick off, and MT, take it away.
Thanks for the great introduction, Alyssa, and thank you everyone for joining. So our agenda for today, we'll talk about the typical data journey and why it's important to recognize where you are today and where you should be aiming for. I'll go over why you should consider Snowflake with Xpress Migrator as the enabler. And then I'll hand to Oz to walk through some of the typical data management challenges, which hopefully resonate with some of you. You probably relate to a lot of those. We'll give an overview of Snowflake as a data management solution, and then we'll get more into the Xpress Migrator, Trident Snowflake Xpress Migrator. There's a bit of a case study at the end for a real world use of this tool. And then we've got that great demo towards the end with the open forum for questions. Next slide, please, Oz. So the data journey. It's fair to say a lot of the organizations we work with are typically sitting around stage one or stage two of this journey. At stage one, organizations are characterized by having data silos, no real source or store of the truth. Key stakeholders often presented with numbers that don't align, lots of manual effort. I'm sure you can relate to that. Dumping data to Excel spreadsheets to get data in a usable shape. And the main challenge at this stage is organizations at that stage one ultimately lack digital agility to use data to respond to market forces, come up with views of that data or applications against that data to drive actionable insights. Very constrained position to be in. Now, obviously what we want to do is see a shift right up this ladder. At stage two, we introduce automation and integration, better querying and reporting, improve visibility, some good dashboards thrown in for good measure. But we still tend to lack that single source of truth at stage two. And oftentimes data ends up being shoved into the front end tool. How many times have you seen Power BI or Tableau or Click overdeveloped, bloated, slow, plenty of business logic up in that front end layer? It can be hard to grapple with. Now, where the good stuff starts to get unlocked is when we start treating data as an asset. When we get to about stage three, we're getting closer to that single source of truth through data automation, We're doing things like performance management, where your actuals are compared against the plan of some kind, targets, budgets, and forecasts, so we can really see how we're performing. But stages 4 and 5 are where the really good stuff starts to happen. You've got good data in the right shape. You can get more sophisticated with your use cases, do things like scenario modeling, sensitivity analysis to understand the true drivers of your business performance, and be able to drill down into that driver tree to see where the true issues are. Now, the great thing about this data journey, I'm guessing many of you don't currently have a clear data strategy. Congratulations if you do, but oftentimes that's not in place. And this can form the basis of that. And the wonderful thing about Snowflake is it can be a key enabler of the climb up this ladder. Okay. Next slide, please, Oz. So why Express migrate to Snowflake? Let's talk about some of the benefits. Scalability on the left. You know, the challenge with on-premise environments is they're never the right size. They're typically over-spec'd. You've got too much capacity, not using half of it, or they're under-spec'd. You're really redlining against limits. And typically organizations will start switching things off. And ironically, they'll switch the firewalls off and switch other services off, which are typically pretty important. The thing about Snowflake is it adjusts its size depending on load. So it's got that elasticity built into it. Cost efficiency comes from per second computation billing rather than this monthly subscription model, which tends to produce a fair bit of sticker shock. Reliability. How many times have you experienced or heard of server crashes where you've had to go back to a copy of data from yesterday or go to tape to get data back to what it was? Moving to Snowflake offers some pretty compelling data recovery and snapshotting techniques to really insulate you from reliability issues. Increased security. I've lost count how many times I've heard security mentioned across our recent engagements. So many new legislations coming out. You've got the Foreign Investment Review Board stipulating data sovereignty. You've got SOCI coming out of Department of Home Affairs, that's security of critical infrastructure. APRA hanging over your head if you're in financial services, privacy of personal information. The great thing is Snowflake have all that kind of stuff covered. All right, so out of the box, they've got a lot of considerations already covered for you. And visibility, part of the climb up the data journey maturity ladder is opening up increased visibility to key data sets, whether that's internal or what we're actually seeing a lot more of is external data sharing. And a lot of the organizations we work with, the businesses they're in, they're responding to tenders for participation in their marketplace. Increasingly, data sharing is mentioned as a mandatory requirement in those tenders they're responding to. Whether you're making paper or you're exporting goods overseas, it's happening more and more. So there's some good reasons why you should consider Express migrating to Snowflake. I think back to you, Oz, to talk about some top data migration challenges.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. So we've listed a few data migration challenges that we see in the market most often, and I'll walk through them one by one. The first one we see is we don't know where we will begin, because you've got many options when you want to migrate to the cloud. Just give me 1 second, sorry about that. There are many cloud migration platforms like Azure, AWS, Google. There are various cloud databases like Snowflake. There are different integration tools like Matillion, Fivetran, right? There are various migration strategies that you might employ. So where do you start? So Tridant, as you know, is available as to provide trusted advice in this area. The second challenge that we see is determining what data to migrate. Do we migrate all the data that you have currently on premise, like you have got a data warehouse or a data lake? Do you migrate that all? Do you migrate some of your business source systems like your CRM and your ERP system? What approach do you use to migrate the data? Do you use a data-driven approach, like you decide based on what data you have, or do you take a requirements-driven approach? More often than not, we've seen that the requirements-driven approach is the best way to go. It delivers value quickly and helps deliver value early in the process. So that is what we would recommend in that scenario. In the resources side, we've seen, if you don't have the right people involved right from the start, the right business and technical stakeholders, it can be quite a challenge to get value out of the system. So that's another consideration that we have. The next step would be to define a migration process, right? How do you move your data quickly to the cloud? And also, how do you structure it in the right way so that you can get insights from it? So what should be the various steps in the migration process, and what fits your organization better? So that's something that you will kind of be faced with. The next challenge we come across very often, and this is a challenge that people come with straight out of the bat. This is what they're facing in the on-premise world more often than not. Is there's a data governance problem in terms of who has access to your data, for example, across the organization. You've got your sensitive data sets, and you've got organization-wide data sets. So who has access to that? How do you share data across your organization, and how do you share data externally, and how do you do that in a secure way? Because do you just share it using an email and with a password, with a file with a password in it, or do you have a better method of defining how you share it, who you share it with, and when that share can be revoked, and how do you keep track who's accessing that share and things like that? How do you know what rules you've applied over the journey of your data? When you've migrated your data to the cloud, you've applied some business rules to your data, and then you've prepared some dashboards and reports. What sort of rules have you applied, and how has that data been transformed? How do you know what those rules are when somebody asks you how you've arrived to a particular number for a business metric? So these are some of the data governance challenges or questions we are faced with by our customers, and then we help them through that journey. And the last one, which is quite obvious, that we recommend adequate testing and validating of your data, and some of the use cases that have been kind of implemented. We need to dedicate sufficient time towards the end for that, and we need to have the right stakeholders involved to get that done. So yeah, these are some of the challenges that we are faced with day to day. Moving on to the next slide, and over to you, Monty.
Thank you very much, Oswald. Yeah, look, it's really great to see so much thought that goes into the journey that organizations go through to be more mature, and also the challenges that things like the Xpress Migrator tackle too. So look, as part of Snowflake, we're always very, very happy to see partners building these sort of solutions, because they're absolutely critical. Snowflake's an incredible platform, which I'll take you through in a sense very soon. But without data in the box, it's still just a platform, isn't it? It's just technology. So let me start here. I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey on Snowflake and what makes us different. So we use the term data cloud now, and that's a case of being more than just a data warehouse or a data lake. And I mean, we handle those workloads really well. That's our bread and butter. It's where we began. But we've expanded on the idea that you can have all of your data and your workloads in one place. So that could be a concept of data engineering pipelines, data science applications, all built on Snowflake. And of course, data warehouses and data lakes, all in one very cost-effective and secure location. But a key differentiator for us, and it's something that Michael touched on too, is the ability to share data very easily and securely. And when I say very easily, it's almost an understatement of that actual functionality. So thousands of organizations are sharing data with business within their business ecosystem and out of it. And they're using the data cloud. And to illustrate this a bit further, what you're seeing here is a visualization the Snowflake product team built, where each dot is an organization and each line shows a data sharing connection between them, or what we refer to as stable edges. So each of these dots represent different businesses worldwide, as well as the most relevant data from leading providers. You could have a data provider building information on geospatial mapping or COVID information or whatever, and you could be consuming that yourself within your organization. And at the top, you can see an example of a software company who has created an additional product offering. So, and this is, in this case, it goes back to what I was just saying. It could be geospatial data or COVID data or anything you can imagine, sharing data with hundreds of users using Snowflake. So the big cluster, as we go a little bit below, are companies pulling in this case, it's COVID-19 testing data and vaccine data from the Snowflake data marketplace. And many of those companies are using this data to manage regional impacts of COVID on their business as well as forecast business recovery. And if we start to move a little bit further down, there's examples of companies consuming financial data from commercial data providers, all without requiring the creation of data pipelines. Thanks to the data cloud, they can log into the data cloud, to the marketplace, and pull in data straight away and start using that with their existing data sets and enhancing it. And that's a huge, huge value prop. And we've also included two states of the same diagram, taken at different times to illustrate how fast these connections or stable edges are growing. And these stable edges are growing exponentially, even without needing to quote stats. You can visually see how distinctly different April 2020 was to January 2022. And as I said, this is growing rapidly. That's just not organizations sharing data internally and externally. That's people absorbing data from other platforms altogether as well. So when we think of the data journey we just saw before, these are all organizations in that stage 3 and above. They're now using data as an asset, and they're driving value of it or through it through better collaboration and driving a competitive advantage, but even monetizing data potentially through the Snowflake marketplace. So I'll go next slide. Thanks, Oz. Okay, and then there's the old question of, well, how do we do this? And how does Snowflake enable organizations to treat data as an asset? Well, Snowflake's platform is what we consider a unified architecture. It allows you to integrate data from a wide range of data sources and types, whether it be structured, semi-structured, or unstructured. And then you can use it to power use cases across data engineering, data lakes, data science, data warehousing, applications, and data sharing, of course. And it's made up of 3 unique layers that deliver on those critical requirements. There's the concept of an elastic performance engine, the ability to scale out for concurrency or up for complexity, and then intelligent infrastructure. And this is, at a high level, it's reducing the amount of administration and maintenance required through automation. And then there's the cross-cloud SnowGrid. So this is our technology that allows customers to share data across clouds, cloud vendors and regions, a true multi-cloud, multi-region strategy. So we're not going to go into deep detail into these now. We generally save that for our technical deep dives, but know that there are enablers for 3 key things organizations really need when it comes to a data platform. And those 3 things are access, governance, and action. So access means that organizations can discover and share data without physically moving it within their organization, the ecosystem, as well as third parties. And governance means knowing and protecting your data in a way that can unlock new value, and collaboration while maintaining the highest levels of security and compliance, because that's key to all of our organizations. And then action, that means you can empower every part of your business with data to build better products, make faster decisions, create new revenue streams, and realize the value of the greatest untapped asset you have, which is data. And what that boils down to is that with your data in Snowflake, you can create an enormous amount of value from your data, truly treat data as an asset, but you need your data to be in Snowflake, which is where solutions like the Xpress Migrator come in. So let's get the next slide. Thanks, Oz. So our customers see these benefits too, and they're already talking about it, because finally, an organization can purely focus on business outcomes and drive growth. When you can access all of your data across all those workloads in one place without having to create duplicates of data and the overhead that goes with it, then you can focus on doing your business itself and driving business outcomes and staying competitive. And that has a direct flow-on effect for cost too. Well, one of the main selling points of Snowflake is the fact that it's extremely low maintenance. In fact, that's at the core of our philosophy. The technology should just get out of the way and let organizations solve their problems, not overly administrate data. So then when you take all of that complexity out of an environment, such as reducing the admin, the complexity of working on multiple workloads, well, you're effectively de-risking implementations and the ongoing usage as well. less complexity correlates directly to less risk. And the overwhelming majority of our customers see this too. So when we consider these points and the stats, it's no wonder why you see Tridant building the Express Migrator on Snowflake. That is the scalability support, the cost efficiency, reliability, increased security and visibility. We align on core values that are really about supporting customers to deliver on business outcomes. The next slide, thanks, Oz. Okay, and I thought we'd share quickly share a customer use case as well. I can throw a link in the chat for anyone interested for the detailed use case, which is on our resources Snowflake website, but at a high level. So for example, Sydney University moved from some of the classic on-premise sources to Snowflake for really extremely common issues. And that was performance degradation of their data warehouses, complexity working with multiple different data types across multiple technologies. Think of that complexity where we have different tech and the knowledge required to use it. And all Sydney Uni really wanted to do was just use their data to solve their problems, but they were overstretched trying to administrate, maintain, and performance tune multiple platforms. So moving to Snowflake ticked a lot of boxes for them as well. So another one of the philosophies is to embrace how a customer already works with data. So we're effectively a SQL database as a massive oversimplification for what the platform really is. But what it really means is that you can work with multiple different data types across multiple workloads using the traditional database knowledge you have now. So it's a low training cost ultimately as well. And we also can scale up and out on demand to increase computing power whenever needed. And you no longer have to worry about storage and the expansion thereof because we're a cloud platform and we can accommodate these changes on demand. This isn't the same on-premise issues we've had for years about having to worry about scaling and getting new hard disks and upgrades and so on. So, and not to mention something actually quite key to this is we also compress all of your data, minimizing storage costs in general. And that's actually one of our features we bring out quite regularly. We're constantly finding ways to better compress data, which means we're constantly saving our customers on storage in the first place as well. And ultimately, the result for Sydney Uni is it's a significant operating cost savings annually, but they also can now get to the business of just running their business. All they had to do was get their data into Snowflake first. So I'm going to stop there. And this use case is a very, very common one for education, but also other industries as well. And it relates very well to organizations that are moving into that stage 3 of the journey and beyond that we saw before, where we're turning data into an asset and organizations are then setting themselves up to mature even further as a data-driven company or an organization. So that's me for now. I'm going to pass over to Michael, I believe now, to talk about their experience.
Yeah, thanks, Monty. So just to talk about a couple of customer stories here, and without going into too much detail, just touching on the Opal story, because I think Oz is going to delve into the tennis case study a little bit later on. But for Opal, making quality paper is dependent on getting the right raw materials into the process and ensuring their commercial transactions are complete and they've got visibility into what's happening. And so that area of the business is relying on Snowflake to house data for key reporting. Further on from that, given their manufacturing focus, we're exploring some innovative approaches for optimizing some of the expensive additives that go into paper making with Snowflake, the likely storage mechanism, and Snowpark, the likely data science environment for those efforts. So you've got a mixture of more traditional approaches of getting just data into a central repository so we can do better reporting, but also more sophistication around optimization and data science and machine learning. For Hungry, what we call a digital native, it was all about customer churn and dealing with the variable demand that eventuated for them out of COVID, being a contactless ordering technology that many of you probably seen over the past couple of years in restaurants around the place. Like I said, Oz will talk in more detail about Tennis Australia. For Moreton Bay, early in the journey for them, and I know we're helping them with some data integration approaches of how to get more data into that environment, and maybe Oz, you can touch on a bit of detail there, but some really good stories coming together. And the best part is these guys are really early on the journey, right? And some of the initial value that's being realized is really, really compelling. But the most amazing thing for me is the cost involved in running Snowflake for these early use cases is very small. It's in the few hundreds of dollars. So don't quote me on that, because every unique situation is different, but not expensive by any stretch of the imagination to get moving on this platform. Okay, so that's been one great thing for me to see, is there is a absence of sticker shock with the Snowflake platform. Back to you, Oz.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Yeah. Going on to the client success story, and this is a large sports organization that we worked with recently. And as Monty said, the use case that Sydney University had is the same use case that Tennis Australia had, in the sense that they needed to modernize their data platform, which they had on premise, right? So they were going through a stage of where the platform was not performing well. The data loads were failing once in a while, or regularly sometimes, and especially during events, happening, and just pre-event, when the crucial period when tickets are being sold, and you want to know exactly what's happening on a close to real-time basis. That was really hurting them. And also data governance was an issue, in terms of like not knowing who they had given access to the data to, and if somebody had left organization, had the data access been revoked, and things like that. So yeah, performance, data governance, just not meeting the business needs, being on an on-premise solution. And the marketing, and this use case was unique in the sense that the marketing department took it upon themselves to kind of lead this charge. So the business led the charge in trying to modernize the data platform, because it was not serving their needs. And the marketing team was looking for a single view of the customer, especially pre-event, post-event, and during the event, as to who they are engaging with, and who's buying the tickets, who's kind of playing the sport at the grassroots level, at the clubs that are in our suburbs. So they wanted to have a better understanding of their customer, a 360-degree understanding. And also they wanted to have a single view of the customer, because they had multiple platforms giving them multiple views of the same thing, and it was tough for them on the fly to decide what was the right answer. And many organizations go through this. We face this every day, that an organization is saying, oh, we've got the same story being told to us by 3 different source systems, and we need to decide what is the right answer, right, in some place. And typically the place to do that is in your data foundation layer, which we're going to kind of talk about soon. So this was some of their challenges, and what we did was we migrated them to Snowflake, to the cloud. The good thing is we've used this Snowflake Xpress Migrator solution that we are going to talk about. We used that particular solution in this case study. We moved the data quickly to the cloud, and as Michael mentioned, the cost of this migration was quite low. The cost is less on the storage of the data, but it tends to come in when you're actually using the data, gaining value from the data. That's when the cost starts to increase a little bit. But initially, the cost is, as Michael said, it's lower to get into the cloud platform. So so that's what we did. We migrated the data to the cloud. We migrated a few data sources that they needed. We combined them. We prepared the data to be suitable for data analytics. And we gave data governance a strong focus right from the start. We connected Snowflake with Active Directory and Azure Active Directory. We connected the front end Power BI tool to Active Directory, so that we could have a tight control of how we're giving access. And we were also giving role-based access, right? Not user-based access. So that made it easier for the company to do that. We use Matillion as a data integration tool to integrate all the data and drive the end-to-end data orchestration process, because we had a data lake and a data warehouse, and we had various data sources like on-premise, cloud, some which were API-based, some which were using flat files. So all sorts of data sources, and also some of them had JSON data, some had Avro and Parquet. some had just relational, SQL data. So yeah, so all sorts of data being put in by Matillion into Snowflake, and that kind of gave a lot of value. And the key outcomes that the organization kind of realized is there was less failures. The first thing they kind of noticed is there was no more failures in the data loading process. It was reliable day on day. For the past year and a half, there's been absolutely no failures in loading the data. And that is a big difference from the on-premise world, where there used to be maybe failures of every week or every couple of weeks. So a big difference in terms of the effort being spent to monitor, to fix things, to keep things running. So huge savings on it. And that effort was directed towards more, business tasks, kind of business-friendly tasks. So now they had access to data they did not have before, because now that we were able to quickly load data into Snowflake, we could load more data sets that were out there that the organization needed to make to make this happen, to make their story work. So we loaded a lot more data that they didn't have access to before, and now the marketing team is getting closer to the play. I wouldn't say that they've achieved the gold standard already and they've finished their journey. They're getting to that stage 3, where they're getting a single view of the customer, they're getting a customer 360-degree view, and they're getting better at using the data for their business. On to the next slide, where we'll talk about the Snowflake Xpress Migrator solution, the topic of this webinar. So just to introduce this particular tool that we've developed, it is an industry agnostic. It's a vertical agnostic tool. It can be applied to any industry, to education, to telecom, to government, to any sort of industry that you might want to apply it to. It is tool agnostic. It's a framework that we've developed. So as long as your data can be relational data, it can be files, it can be JSON, semi-structured kind of data. So any sort of source data, and the target in this case is Snowflake and Matillion. We've used Matillion for this for the purpose of this demo, but it's really a flexible framework or a metadata driven approach that we are taking in this solution to and the aim is to quickly migrate data from on-premise to the cloud. And what I mean by quickly is, it doesn't matter if you've got 10 tables, 20 tables, 100 tables in a data source. We can quickly migrate that. Now, obviously, if you have a large number of tables, the effort in configuring the framework is a little more, but it is not as if we are loading one table at a time, is what I'm trying to get to. We're trying to load bulk data at the same time, and we are able to continuously load that data on an ongoing basis. So it's like a reusable framework, agnostic framework that can apply. Some of the solution features, it migrates data from an on-premise database like SQL Server or Oracle, or from your CRM or ERP systems, which is on an on-premise system. We can migrate that into the cloud. We can use any sort of technology. We've spoken of Matillion here to transfer the data, but any technology can be used. We can connect the Snowflake. Once the data is in Snowflake, we can connect the data analytics tool like Power BI to Snowflake, and we can set up data analytics on top of it, where be it customer data analytics, or even, for example, which we've shown here, is a cost monitoring dashboard, right? You want to monitor your usage and cost of your data, because when you move to the cloud, one thing you've got to keep in mind is you're now paying for what you use, right? So it's a little bit different mindset that you need to get into. You're no longer paying in advance. It's no longer CapEx that you've paid for in your data center, a large amount in advance, and then you don't pay too much more for that hardware, but then you pay for the resources. Here, you get into a model where it's OpEx costs, where you load your data in and you use that data, and then you kind of pay for what you use, and only for what you use, down to the second, right? So a lot of our customers like to set up a cost management or a usage management dashboard right from the start. And we've got another accelerator set up for that at Trident. And so we can combine the two accelerators together and give you value straight out of the bat. So that's some of the solution features. And obviously, when we migrate the data, we can set up some business rules for you, like how would you like your data to be loaded? Would it be a clean truncated load of the data? Would it be an incremental load? Would you want to put in some business rules while loading the data? Would you like to cleanse the data a little bit before loading the data? We can do all that as part of the framework. So a lot of value can be achieved as you're loading your data to the cloud. So it doesn't have to be the problems that you have as of now on premise don't have to be transferred onto the cloud. You can kind of look to change that as you migrate. This is the architecture that we've put together for what a solution like this could look like. This is just one option, by the way. As I said, we've put this architecture on top of Microsoft Azure. It can, as you know, it can go on AWS or Google Cloud, right? So it's a left to right architecture where you've got your data sources, where they can be on premise, they can be on cloud, they can be through any sort of API, flat file, web services, it doesn't matter. We'll get that data onto Snowflake. Sometimes it requires an intermediary landing layer, like a blob storage or a transient SQL database, to make things like security and push-pull kind of mechanisms easier. We have these intermediary landing stages, but they don't have to be permanent, right? Sometimes they are permanent if you need it to be permanent. Sometimes they can just be blown away once the data is in there. So this is the structure we've got, Azure-based platform, Matillion loading the data into Snowflake. In Snowflake, we typically recommend a three-layered approach, a staging, landing, and a warehouse kind of three-layered approach. It lends value to the customers that way. And then you've got Power BI sitting on top of either your Snowflake data lake or your Snowflake data warehouse. It can sit on both the places, right? The advantage of it sitting over the lake is you have faster access to data, right? You load the data quickly, and you quickly can see your data before, if you want more real-time access, you point it to the lake. And then as you're going further down, you want more curated insights, then goes down to the warehouse level, and the Power BI can be pointed to that. And then you've got obviously the data governance layer down at the bottom, where you've got roles and users being procured through Active Directory, Azure Active Directory. And a lot of our clients are looking at monitoring applications like Datadog to make sure that everything remains secure and and everything is as per expectations, right? So that's what this architecture talks about at a high level. And now we'll get into a demo of this for this Snowflake Xpress Migrator. It's a 5-minute demo video that Rupak has built for us. So what we've done is we've moved that solution. We've tried to demonstrate that solution on our environment. So what we've done is we've made a SQL Server data source to mimic a real life case study, a SQL Server data source. We're going to load that data into Snowflake. We are only showing you 2 tables just to make it easy and quick for the demo, but it could be any number of tables. It could be any number of databases that we're migrating, right? So we don't have a limit on that. But for the sake of this demo, we've just done 2 tables. So without further ado, I'll play the video.
This is a demo for Snowflake Xpress Migrator. Xpress Migrator is a cloud agnostic, metadata-driven data migration tool. And for this demo, we are using SQL Server as the source and Snowflake Data Warehouse as the target. We're also using Matillion as the main ETL tool. If I go to the source side, we have created a database called Snowflake Xpress Migrator, and we have loaded 2 tables, demographics and JH_global. So this is the JH_global data, and it has got 991 rows. And in demographics, we have got 1000 rows. If I go to the Snowflake side, we have created an admin schema, a landing schema, and a staging schema. So admin schema has all the configuration tables like ETL load statistics, the reconcile tables, the schedule tables. The landing table has, the landing schema has demographics table and GHU_COVID table. So you can see that we don't have any rows at the moment for demographics and GHU_COVID for landing. And also in staging, we don't have any rows for both the tables. So since I mentioned that this is a metadata driven approach, this table, if I do a preview for this table, you can see that we have specified the metadata of the source, which table it's coming from. And yeah, so for demographics table, we'll be doing a full load. And for GHU_global table, we'll be doing an incremental load. So that's why we have specified overwrite here and append here. Also, if there's any business logic that we need to add from landing to staging, we can use that in the view. The GHU_global table has got a column called last update time, and we'll be using this column to figure out which is the most recently added record. So if I run the pipeline now, one more thing. So we also have other tables like ETL load statistics and reconcile results, which are empty at the moment. And if I run the pipeline, so I've started the pipeline and I can see the status here. The pipeline is running. And it has started with a data extract. So one table is done. And it has loaded 1000 records. And this is GHU_COVID. And it has loaded 991 records. And the pipeline is almost done. So it's doing the reconcile part now. And we'll be able to see the results as well. So this is success. If we go to the Snowflake side, if I do a refresh here, and if I go to the landing table, demographics has got 1000 rows now. GHU_COVID has got 991 rows, and same with staging tables. So we have a load statistics table. And if we do that, we can see that 1000 records have been ingested for the demographics table. There are 1000 records in the landing schema, and there are 1000 records in the staging schema. For GHU_global, 991 records have been ingested, 991 in landing and staging. So since I mentioned that GHU_COVID is an incremental pipeline, we'll test that out as well. So let me check which is the most recent record. And if you do this, you can see that the most recent record is on 11th of April. It's at 2 p.m., 2:46 p.m. And so here's an insert statement, and this will insert this record with current timestamp. So let me run this statement as well. And if I do the most recent record now, it's 12th April 22:27, which is 10:27 p.m. So if I run the Matillion pipeline now, you'll be able to see that the demographics table, which was a full load pipeline, will load all the 1000 records, whereas GHU_COVID will just load a single row, which is the most recent record. So if I go here, so first is the demographics. It has loaded all the 1000 records. And then if I go to the GHU_COVID, it has just loaded a single record. If I go to the Snowflake side to verify the ETL load statistics. So as I mentioned, the GHU_COVID has loaded just a single record, and it has got 992 records in landing and 992 records in staging. So we can schedule this pipeline to run on a periodic basis. Thank you.
Thanks, Rupak. Thank you for that. So that was the demo of the solution, and I hope it kind of resonates with you. I think I'll hand over to Michael then to wind up the demo with a Trident overview.
Yeah, great demo, Rupak. Thank you, Woz. Look, some of you probably already know us, but for those who don't, we've been around for, 15 years now, starting in 2007 out of Melbourne, focusing initially on Office of Finance and helping finance folk get off Excel spreadsheets and do more robust budgeting and forecasting. These days, we balance that very nicely with analytics. And as you can see the tagline there, analytics and planning. We're around 100 people these days, and we do everything from client advisory. Many organizations actually don't know where to start. They may not have a data strategy or a roadmap to roll these capabilities out. So we oftentimes help with analyzing the landscape and helping prioritize and building out those roadmaps, onto solution design, helping with software licensing, solution implementation, of course, training and enablement, and as well support services, up to a 24/7 arrangement if required internationally, with a follow the sun approach. You can see the vendors that we align with down the bottom. We aim to be trusted advisors. We don't lean one way or the other, except when the product is so compelling like Snowflake. It's usually towards the top of our list for recommendations. So that's us. Anything else to add, Alyssa? You're going to bookend it for us or open for questions?
We do have a few questions. We've got 4 questions, and I apologize to everyone. I said 30, 45 minutes. We're a little bit over, but hopefully we can answer these questions quickly. So the questions that have come in as the first one is, does this work for any on-prem data warehouse?
Yeah, and I can take that. Yes, it will. It'll work on on-prem databases like SQL Server, Oracle, or IBM DB2, or any relational database. It will work. It will also work for semi-structured data from JSON, Avro, Parquet, and such. And we can also take data from flat files.
Okay, excellent. The second question was, how much does it cost to get started on Snowflake?
Yeah, as Michael kind of alluded
to
that, it's not very much. You can start with a free trial. Obviously, when we conduct a pilot or a POC, we leverage that. Snowflake gives you a 1-month free trial with a certain number of credits in terms of dollar value. Similarly, so does Matillion. It gives a couple of weeks of a free trial, and we take advantage of that for a pilot or a POC, so that the initial upfront stuff can be done free of cost. But when you roll on from the pilot to your first use case, you start paying per second as you go. Before we start paying, we set up these cost management and user management dashboards for our customers to have a good look at what you're spending. And you can also put monitors on your cost. A lot of our customers, as they mature in their journey, they work on putting cost monitors or cost safeguards in place. And as you use cloud tools more and more, you kind of get familiar with that line of thinking.
Okay, great. And if this isn't answering the questions, just send through another a question. Sorry, we did get a follow-up question on that. Can it read SQL Server stored procedure to Snowflake?
Yeah. So we had a use case where we looked at SQL Server stored procedures and moving that logic to Snowflake. If I'm not mistaken, Monty, stored procedures in Snowflake are Java based, right? That's what we have. So with SQL Server stored procedures, you've got to rewrite them, or you've got to use some sort of a tool to translate that logic into Snowflake when migrating the logic, right? So you've got to look at that logic and then translate that in an equivalent kind of logic in Matillion, for example.
Yeah, and spot on, just to add to that, you're right. So right now they're Java or JavaScript in some cases too, and coming very soon, there'll be the classic SQL store procedures, which would make moving these across very simple. Stay tuned for a summit in June.
Yeah, and I think we've had a lot of these requests come from the clients right from the start when we were using Snowflake a few years ago, that SQL-based stored procedures would be good. But the Java-based stored procedures do help. It does involve a little bit of effort to translate that. You can also do statement by statement kind of translation of the SQL stored procedure as it is into Snowflake, and then run it with tasks and things like that. A little bit of effort involved in that kind of translation, but there are some tools out there in the market that help you to translate stored procedures quickly also.
Okay, fabulous. Just one more question. Just how much time does it take to finish migrating and set it up?
Yeah, so it all depends on the number of databases we have and the number of tables and things like that. So if you have just to give you an example, if you have like one database with say 30 to 40 tables, and you know what kind of logic you need in terms of translating that it's a full load or an incremental load, it can be done within less than 10 days of effort. For example, we've done that with one of our customers where we covered almost 30 to 50 tables, I think approximately, within less than 10 days. So it all depends on the number of databases. The loading part of the data from on-premise to the cloud is very quick. It doesn't take too much of time. It's post that, what do you want to do to gain value out of that data? Do you want to then join your data sets together to gain value? You want to have a single source of truth in terms of your customer data, some master data. And then do you want to build some sort of dashboards and things like that? So that will add time to the whole process, but the data migration is usually very quick.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all the questions that we have for today. Any final comments from you guys, Oz, MT, Monty?
All I would say is data sharing is coming. Whether you're a utilities provider and you want to hand it off to councils or the NBN, or you're a manufacturer of a product and you want to get closer to your suppliers and purchasers, so you can see lead times and demands and things like that, or even in a government setting, sharing across agencies, that's coming. And I think what's also important to go in lockstep with that is just some thinking around initial data governance frameworks. So if you haven't read up on data governance, look up the DMBOK, the data management body of knowledge. It'll give you a good little starter for knowing where to start with that. But if you do get stuck and you feel like data governance is an issue for you, please reach out to us.
Yeah, and I just want to add that, look, thanks to Trident, these sort of solutions, once again, that we have a partner like Trident building Xpress Migrator to Snowflake, they're absolutely critical, because it is, once again, building data as an asset, and you can't get value out of that asset unless data is actually in the box. So I'm really excited to see this take off.
Thanks, Marty.
Thanks, Monty. Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Thank you, guys. We'll make the recording of this available on the website. If you have any questions at all, reach out to the numbers or the email address that are on the screen just there in blue. Other than that, thanks, guys. Thanks for all of your valuable stories and your expertise, and looking forward to the next session.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alyssa.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.